Well, thank you very much and welcome, and it's really an honor to be here, and I'm really glad that we were able to provide funding to get you here to talk about EWB International. Had the pleasure of meeting Kathy face to face after 4 years. And for my presentation, what I'm going to do is just give you a quick overview about how the EWB International relationship looks internally to Alcoa, and also just as the day goes forward is to kind of consider us as another partner. And it's not just Alcoa. As you know, there's a lot of companies and corporations and funders who are very interested in what EWB does. For some reason, I'm short of breath. You're all engineers, so you're of no help. No. So we'll get started. And this is not, how do I move this forward? Throw it at it? Oh. It's got a little timer. There we go. All right. So one thing I'd like to just start off with, there's a big buzzword right now, design thinking, right? Design thinking in engineering, design thinking in general. And for corporate America, what the whole idea about design thinking is really to get people to think about, just to think about different situations differently, obviously. And we're really using design thinking. We've got a huge engineering population who works for us, but 75% of our workforce are really skilled trades, operators, and technicians. So when we think about EWB International, and you think about a corporation, what's very interesting is because we're global, a lot of the people, especially in the developing countries where we work, some of your projects actually impact them. And in some wealthy countries, such as Australia. But we also have projects we have a large presence in Guinea, Morocco, Jamaica, Suriname, Brazil, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very interesting for us as internal communications is how to get it out in terms of the different sorts of projects that we're actually doing in our own communities that EWB is responsible for. When we think of design to innovation, everyone knows about innovation on the product side. Everyone knows about design on the process side. And what we're doing now within Alcoa is we're really looking at innovation on the people side. And with EWB, to be blunt, it's wonderful because it helps us to attract engineers to Alcoa. It helps these engineering students to understand what we're doing. There's a lot of innovations that we have that directly benefit communities. We have something called NEWT, which is a natural filtration type of technology that's being used. We also do a lot with biomimicry, where you take a look at what goes on in nature and then replicate it. We have something called EcoClean, which is like a type of coating that actually operates like a leaf. So a lot of, like with the EWB and the different innovations that you actually have in communities and working with students and whatnot falls in line with what we're trying to do with people. Again, we are a very innovative company. We care about our communities. I think all of those values fall in line with what EWB chapters are about as well. Internally, when you take a look at innovating with people, you know, we started with an old push model, and with our EWB relationship, on the push side, it was basically, great, we have a relationship with EWB. It's like, wow, wonderful. And then it was like, well, what locations can participate? So we went running around, and that's what I love about EWB International, because for us, it's centralized in terms of how different countries are selected and how they're tapping into all of your different strengths to involve Alcoa at the key universities in those countries. So that's one area where EWB International is just fantastic, is just on the administrative side. And then the idea was there's kind of a loose linkage with talent priorities. On the pull model, and I understand this, what we're looking with EWB, and that's where Kathy's a great seeing-eye dog sometimes for me, because she's like trying to bring me back. It's like, no, EWB does this. But for EWB, for instance, Okay, Alcoa hires material engineers, aerospace engineers, process engineers, chemical engineers. But the whole idea is it doesn't matter the engineering discipline. It matters the fact that a lot of the people who are getting these engineering degrees really care about what they're doing. And through EWB, they get that opportunity. So when we look at the new poll as a poll model, what it is again, it's a way to attract, through our participation with EWB, engineers who might consider Alcoa as a place to work. Now, it's not a one-to-one tie, and I think you all noticed that nowhere does an Alcoan suddenly show up and go, great, bring your students to us. We don't do that. But the whole point is, it's nice that we're affiliated with EWB and with this millennial generation. And what do the millennial generation want? They want to do well by doing good. Grammatically, I always screw that up. It could be while doing good, but you get the idea. So that's the poll model, and that's how we work it. And of course, I thought you'd enjoy this because it sort of looks like a Rube Goldberg, right? You're systematic people, like, what the hell is it? But anyways, you can see where we're coming from. And then lastly, first of all, thank you to Shishi of New York. I just sort of took this off Google. I have no idea who Shishi of New York is. And I couldn't block it out. But, you know, success, a lot of times, success, you know, it's not linear. And success really looks something like over there. And that's what's really, I think, great about today, is we don't have to be worried about what's the shortest distance between A, B, C, and D, especially when we're thinking about the questions that Oliver talked about. And it's okay if it's muddled. So I look forward to being part of the muddle. And just one thing I wanted to just show you, and then I'll get off here, is as part of the muddle, and when we think about today, and this is selfish, because this is where I don't want to poison you. You think any way you want with the spaghetti over there. But anyways, when I think about this is like a mind map. Like Kathy, I was a Peace Corps volunteer. It was all about visuals, because most of us couldn't speak the language. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Fiji. They couldn't pronounce my name. Instead of Scott, it was Squat. But anyways, but when I look at EWB, I see you here. I see you doing a lot of wonderful things with students, with faculty, your chapters. That's what you're doing. And then you also do a lot of wonderful things with your communities in terms of the different projects and within specific constraints. Like Kathy was talking about the whole supply chain. You have a technology in a certain developing country, it's got to be sustainable. If it's not introduced. And I've worked in Mozambique, I've worked in Angola, and I certainly appreciate that. And I'd just like you to consider down here. It could have been up there, but that really would have been too much of a prioritization. But anyways, we're down here with corporate. And when you think about this, and we think about design thinking, and this is really important for all of you, is you can think about how does EWB leverage what's within a corporation? All right? Yeah, you got the funding. That's great. And yeah, we get the visibility with the students. Wonderful. And we might get some great touch points with faculty. But what we're also interested in is, in some ways, you should get selfish. You should think, okay, EWB in, let's say, Australia, working with a certain university, oh, how can Alcoa's engineers get more involved in this? Why does that help you? Because if you want more funding and more visibility in the whole 9 yards, is those engineers might be able to add to what you're doing in communities or with students or with faculty. Another one is with our thought leaders. If you're able to, like in Australia, we have Alan Kransberg. Is there anyone from here from Australia? All right, like Alan Kransberg totally loves EWB. Now he is the head of Alcoa in Australia. If you were tied with him somehow, this is a person who does a lot of speaking, understands it, gets it about corporate social responsibility, and would love to know more about EWB in Australia. Again, all of these sorts of things, is if you get selfish, is how to develop that opportunity. Something else within corporations, it's all about retention. Before I'm talking about how do we attract students. Great, EWB, what we're doing, want to do well by doing good and this whole bit. Do you realize that corporations have a huge problem retaining engineers, especially young engineers? How can you help us to solve that problem? What are different ways that if I'm an engineer within Alcoa and I'm interested in what EWB does, but I'm no longer in this sort of college setting, how can I get involved? So I'll just leave you there with just a few thoughts. Are there any questions? I'm pretty informal. No? All right. If I turn my back and I say, does any of this like resonate? How many hands would go up, okay? So does any of this resonate? All right, I'm going to turn around. Keep it anonymous. Was that 75% of the group, 50% of the group, or 25? Just someone tell me. About what? Fellow corporation, man. I know you're... God, that was team play there. Yes? Not with Alcoa. It's new territory, not with Alcoa. Like one thing that we have to do on our side is who were the different engineers or engineering students who right now are part of EWB chapters. I have absolutely no idea. None. So that's a great point. That's a good starting point. Maybe you guys can come up with a model, not just for Alcoa, but for different corporations in general. But again, get selfish. How can you leverage these resources? Dollars? Fine. But these sorts of resources are the ones that build the long-term relationships that actually keep your chapters alive and actually can sustain them over a longer period of time. Any other questions? I hope I wasn't too biased. All right, well, thank you very much.